Okay, good morning. We are back. So, it's been a while, sorry. We are learning the first of the Yud Gimel Ikrim. The first one is Hashem's existence. We saw the Pirush Mishnayos, we saw the Sefer Mitzvahs, and I think we saw, but I'd like to go over source 3, which is the Rambam in Yesodei HaTorah, and I want to point out the following. We're going to do something a little bit different. I've printed out here some Kabbalah sources, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. The first thing to point out, and we won't get to it today, but it's a Rambam towards the end of your sheet here from Moreh Nevuchim and the Abarbanel in Rosh Hashanah. The first two Yesodos, let's sort of be coil them into one. Hashem's existence is different to the others. It's different. It is what is known in philosophy as an ontological argument. And you can look that up, or an argument about the existence of something, a state of being, as opposed to the others. And in order to that's why the Rambam calls it Yesod HaYesodos. Look in source 3, right? Yesod HaYesodos. The rest of them are Yesodos. But this is the Yesod HaYesodos. And the Amud HaChochmos, Leida Sheyesh Shom Motzui Rishon, to know. And we stress this. It is very clear in the Rambam that this is about knowledge. This is not about Kabbalah. Kabbalah in the sense of Masorah, of having received wisdom from prophets or from whatever. Not at all. And I'm going to do it a little bit backwards. We're going to look at two Makoros here. Turn to source 9 and 10. They are the Abarbanel in Rosh Hashanah, Seif Perek Zayin, and the Rambam in Moira, Beis Lamed Gimel, respectively. The Abarbanel here is writing in the Das HaRambam, just to be clear. And you can always go and check it out yourself. Let's do number 9. That goes on something he's been explaining. Mavur. Shahayesoid Harishon, V'hamitzvah Harishon, says the Abarbanel, and he is saying this in the Das HaRambam, who ha'amonus ha'elokus, to believe, okay, he says believe, we're not going to spend time on that, whether he means belief versus knowledge, that's not the point. Ha'amonus ha'elokus rotzaloima, shehu yis'ale nimtza sholem b'tachlis ha'shleimus, mechuyev hamatzius me'atzmai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a perfect being that is the imperative of his own existence. Ve'elzeh kiven b'sefer HaMoira b'perek Lamed Gimel, which we're going to learn. That's the next source. Ba'omrei sh'anoichi v'lo yelechahem shnei ha'yesodos. Rotzaloima, what did the Rambam mean? Metzius ha'el v'yichudai. Ve'ein ha'kavona ba'omrei metzius ha'el shehu nimtza bilvad. When he says the existence of Hashem, he doesn't mean that he is alone is to be found. And we're going to come to this. That word, I want to draw your attention. This is really, really important. Go back to source 3. And we pointed out, this is the very first Rambam in Mishnah Torah, in Yad, right? There is a word, a root, which occurs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in one halacha. Yes. Yesod HaYesodos v'Amud HaChochmos is leida sheyesh shom motzui rishon v'hu mamtzi kol nimtza v'chol hanimtzoim lo nimtzu ela me'amitas hi motzai. And this we'll go back to understand what that actually means. We talk about metzius, something exists. We talk about it in, like I said, it's an ontological argument. It exists, it is. But why do we use the word found or found? We will come back to that. But the Abarbanel makes reference to this, and he digs a bit deeper. He says here, "Ve'ein hakavona ba'omru metzius ha'el shehu nimtza bilvad, ki im shenamin inyan metziusai shehu metzius mechuyev lo efshari. What it means is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only thing that simply must exist. And he is v'shehu hametzius hayoseh shalom she'ef sheliyos. And he is, in terms of existence, he is the most real thing there is. It's a bit hard to. He is the most perfect thing. And because this matter is so, Omar Alov b'Sefer Hamada Yisoida Amud HaChochmos Lahagid. Why does he use this language? Says the Abarbanel to teach us Shahayisoida Zeh Rotzaloima Heyoso Mechiv Amatzius. This idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu must exist. Einoi b'madrega shova l'shara yisoidos. There you have it. It's not on a par with the other yisoidos. Aval hu yisoid v'shoresh l'kulam. It is the basis. It is the foundation for all of them. Kihem nishanim alav v'hu ein nishna aleim. Without the first one, none of the others make sense. You could have the first one without some of the others. So that's what I want to point it out. That's why it says Yisoida. Finished. Got that? That's a very important idea. Next, the Rambam in Moira here. Now, the Rambam here is talking about what happened at Matan Torah, which is a fantastic topic in and of itself, and it's a subject of major machlokes rishonim as to exactly what happened and what Medrega of Nevuah. We're not going to go into that, but we are going to extract something here that is very important for us in terms of this Yisoid. So I'm going to run through it. Follow with me. Yizbairli. That which Moshe Rabbeinu received, Klal Yisrael did not. Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Aseret HaDibros are in the singular. Says the Rambam, that's because they were actually spoken to Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore they are in the singular. Moshe Rabbeinu then came down and told us what he heard. Therefore, it says, Moshe Yedaber v'Elokim Yanenu b'Koil. And then he brings the Mechilta, and we're not going to spend too much time on this, because I'm only mentioning this to contrast the first two. And now he says, he brings the famous Gemara, Chazal, many places. Go right down. Elo. Go down to the line above where I emboldened it, second word, Elo. Elo sheyesh lehem gamkein ma'amar kosav b'harba mekomis min hamidrashes v'hu b'talmud gamkein. However, he says, despite the fact that I've just told you that Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who really Hashem was speaking to, and he went and transferred it to Klal Yisrael. However, there is an exception to this. The Gemara Chazal say very clearly and explicitly that Anoichi and Loyeh, the first two, are fundamentally different. We received the voice, the words of Hashem, exactly like Moshe Rabbeinu did. Moshe Rabbeinu magia aleihem. And this is the fundamental difference. And what does this mean, says the Rambam? That these two fundaments, his existence, and that he is one. Omnom, now this is the point I want to highlight here. Omnom yusag be'iyun ha'enushi v'chol ma sheyodeya b'moifes. God's existence and oneness is something that can be logically derived. And therefore, mishpat hanavi boy, u'mishpat kol mi sheyedaehu shove. A navi has an understanding of Hashem's existence and his oneness. It is, says the Rambam, exactly the same as somebody who has worked it out. Ein Yisrael. One has no more. The one who receives it from a Navi has no advantage over the person who worked it out. These two are not known purely on the basis of Nevuah. And Amra HaTorah, Atahorei Salodas. Omnam, however, Shar HaDibros, Hey mikat hamafrusomois v'hamakubolos loy mikat hamuskolos. Fascinating. Says the Rambam. The others are things that we have received, but they are not muskolos, things that can be intuited.
Yeah, I missed what's the other two?
Sorry?
I missed the others.
What do you mean the others?
So the others. I'm sure.
The rest of the rest of the dibros.
That's the.
Now, one second. Now, what is he saying? I mean, actually, you've got me here because you're asking me a very good question. We would not have known Leisirtzach? Really?
Didn't ask that, but it's a very good question.
Just take it.
Oh, we have all these sources that you've asked me that actually say that we will.
1 second. Again.
Oh,
You know, I was so focused on the Yud Gimel Ikrim that when I, admittedly late at night, when I prepared and read prepared this, it was I had the Yud Gimel Ikrim on the mind. But the Rambam in Meira here, again, you're right, he's talking about their Seres HaDibros. Let me read this again. Let's go through this again. Let's do the bold bits. These two, the Metzius Ha'el, and that he is Echad. Omnam Yusag Be'ino Enushi. V'chol Sheyodea, but Mephius Mishpat Hanovi Yisrim v'Leinedu Shnei Shoshim Elim Tzad Anu Levad. Therefore, the Torah says, "Ata Horeisa Lo Da'as Ki Hashem Hu Elokim Einoid," because those are things Horeisa. You see what he's done? Genius. I've just chapped. Horeisa, you were shown, but also Lo Da'as, because there are two roots. There are two roots to the existence of Hashem. He said, this is something that is, for example, the way the Rambam says in the beginning of Hilchos Avodah Zarah, the way that Avraham Avinu discovered, quote unquote, Hashem. The Rambam writes there, he worked it out. It's an intellectual thing. So that's Horeisa and Lodas. So yes, we experienced Hashem. There was Nevuah. He spoke to us. So that's one way that we know that he exists. But even had he not, we would have known. Ata Horeisa Lodas, even though here they are connected, it's Horeisa Lodas. Ki Hashem hu Elokim, ein oid. So if you're Yichud Hashem, that's Lo Yeh Lecha, right? Nobody else. That shouldn't serve anything else. He's the only one. But then look at this. What does he say? These two, V'loino du Shnei Shoshim Elim Mitzad HaNevuah Levad, Omra Torah Horeisa Lodas. Omnam Shara Dibros He Mikat Hamufrusomois VaHamakubolos Lo Mikat Hamuskolos. You know what? I'm going to take a rain check on this, and I'm going to get. Let me get back to you on this. You need it by tomorrow. Okay? Okay? Yes.
Rabbi always says, like, without God, there's no good or evil. There's no reason not to kill someone.
That is a moral argument for his existence.
Right.
What's that got to do with whether
not known the other.
Okay, you're getting into complicated territories. We've done a series on this. You would know it, but you would know it. This moral a priori, you would know it from being hardwired, which is we've got the Yuthifro dilemma, which is also comes from Hashem, but it doesn't come in terms of revelation. It comes in terms of we're hardwired that way, but it's divine in origin. That's Tzelem Elokim, and that's a fascinating topic. Let's get back to our Rambams here in source 3. I'm going to run through the Rambams again, and then we're going to learn a little bit of Kabbalah. You came just in time, Sammy, yeah? Okay. Put the Gatlon, you can quickly, you might have time to run to mikveh just before we get to the... Okay, let's run through this. We're going to run through these 6 halachas. 6, isn't it? Yeah. Yisoid is Vamud HaChochmos. This is Kvela number 3, yeah? So they said, we're going to spend time on this idea of motzah, and we're going to discover something interesting. Halacha base. And should it enter your mind that he doesn't exist, then nothing can exist. This is the classic, what's known as the ontological argument. Yeah, he has to exist. And if it should enter your mind, halacha gimel, that nothing other than him exists, he still would exist. His is non-contingent existence. Yes? Nothing needs to exist other than him. That was halacha gimel. Halacha daled, and v'husha novi amar Hashem elikim emes. And here he brings in a very interesting thing, truth. And we're going to come back to that, although not today. Truth. Hashem elikim emes. Emes is something, we tend to think, let me say this quickly because maybe it is worthwhile. Emes is something that is rock solid. Emes is when we talk, for example, about a well or a source of water that does not dry up. Do you know how it's expressed in the Novi? We said this morning, where did we say this word? Of a synonym for sheker, for lying. We said it this morning. A boyer is one. Its waters don't lie. What does that mean? It means they remain true all the way through. Emes. Constant. Something that is rock solid. And that's what it means, V'Hashem Elokim Emes. It's a different, we have to know how that's different to Emunah. Yosei Ne'emon b'makom. Okay, but Emes means that he is the ultimate existence and that which must exist. Ve'ein la'acher emes ka'amitosai. He's really hung up on this. There is no other ultimate or absolute concept of truth outside of Hashem's truth. He is. He just is. Halacha hey. Now here he says really interesting. So until now, he has 4 halachas speaking about Hashem existing. He must exist. He is the only thing that has to exist. Nothing else needs to exist. Then halacha hey. Then he brings in something really interesting. Hamotzu hazeh, this thing that has to exist, God, Hashem, is Elokei ha'olam adon kol ha'aretz. He's the boss. Now he brings in relationship. He brings in Führung, leadership, and engagement. He, in the present tense, he's running the show on an ongoing basis. Halacha vav, and then he brings in halacha. Fascinating. This is in the Rambam Mishnah Torah, right? This is the Rambam in halacha. Until now, he has treated us to a little excursion into philosophy. You expect from Moreh Nevuchim. And this is the beginning of Mishnah Torah, his halachic magnum opus. And we've had 5 halachas, which are really deeply philosophical arguments. What a way, it's quite ironic, no? What a way to open his halachic Mishnah Torah, the only thing he wrote in Lashon HaKodesh, etc. And then after going through all this philosophical exploration of Hashem, and then he says, halacha vav, v'yedias davar zeh mitzvah sasei. This knowledge, which is its own imperative, you have to have this knowledge anyway, because nothing else could exist. Philosophy, but it happens to be really interesting. It's if I can say such a thing, I would say it's almost an afterthought. You have to be careful. It sounds a bit apikoros-ish, but v'yedias davar zeh. He didn't start off, by the way, as you might have expected, on the way he starts off pretty much all of his other halachas. There's a mitzvah saseh to read Shema in the morning. There's a mitzvah saseh to build to sit in the sukkah. A mitzvah saseh, actually Hilchos Talmud Torah is an exception. Even Hilchos Tshuva. If anybody does an aveira, you have to do tshuva, and this is a viddur, it's a mitzvah saseh. He sticks it in here after 5 halachas of philosophy. V'yedias, yes?
Quite astounding, isn't it? There are a lot of stories that say like the push of the Yid, and he has a big emuna, and this comes just from like a natural place, and it's just because his father told him, and it's like I don't know, whoever, whatever, but sometimes I feel this is like the highest form of Emunah because it's just so simple and so strong. But according to the Rambam, he's missing mitzvah aseh. He's not doing the mitzvah aseh of knowing it.
Well, you started off very strongly, and we did we not do some? I'm sure we did 1 or 2 sessions, and I gave you a pack of all the different Maramakemas of those who say that the ideal. Yes, we did. I remember we did it, and I've got to look it up. You must have it. Is the ideal just accepting, or is it working it out, or a mixture of both? Remember the Briskerov that the Reb Shach, the Briskerov, that you start off, you work out everything you can, and when your knowledge ends, that's where Emunah begins. Remember, etc. We did a lot of work on that. So it is true. The Rambam is of the opinion that it has to be a yediyah. Yediyas davos mitzvos aseh. You have to have a level of knowledge. It would seem from the Rambam, it's not just accepting, it's yediyah. This knowledge is a mitzvos aseh. Fascinating. Even though it is tautological, as we will discover, we've mentioned this on a couple of occasions. I don't need it. Why do I need it to be a commandment? Because if there is a commander, then I don't need the commandment. And if there is no commander, then this fictional commander can shout until he's blue in the face. That it's a mitzvah aseh needs some work, and we will come back to that. But you're right. Says the Rambam, Yedias davar zeh is a mitzvah aseh shenemar anochi Hashem Elokecha. V'chol hamal al datoi. And if would it enter anybody's mind to think that there is a God other than him, you transgress a negative commandment. Shenemar lo yelecha Elohim acherim al ponai v'kofer be'ikar. And you are kofer in the ikar. Shezehu ha'ikar ha'godoil shehakol toloi boi. And I'm holding myself back from, I'm going to make a statement. Please remember this statement, and we'll revisit it. The reason that he says kofer be'ikar in the singular is because there is only one ikar. Rav Moshe Shapiro Zatzal, and I won't do this today, but he would point out to us that this number, the number 13, is not coincidental. The fact that it's gematria echad, gematria ava, and it also has a meaning in terms of, I think I mentioned every 3-dimensional object has 12 lines, and the 13 is that which pulls it all together. There is only one ikar, but which is Hashem. A full understanding of that has a number of parts. There is only one. We'll come back to that. I've said it. We'll come back. Now let's learn a bit of Kabbalah. Now, this, what do we have here? Source 5. And the reason that we're learning it is because, as far as I'm aware, this is probably, to me, it was the best exposition or explanation of that word that we came across at the beginning of the Rambam so many times. Motzoi, nimtza, motzoi. And he is going to explain to us using a literature Kabbalah approach. Let me explain. The Heilige Leshem was the Reb Elyashiv's Zayda, right? Of the same name, Yosef Shalom Elyashiv. He was the primary Lithuanian literature Makubal. Very, very, it doesn't need me to say anything about it. The difference, if one learns any of his Sfarim, is that he brings to a large extent a Lithuanian analytical approach. It's a sugya to Kabbalah. Okay? And we'll have an example of it here. One of his Sfarim here is Akdomus Usharim. It's a sefer, it's sort of an introduction to Kabbalah. And in the sefer, he writes right very, very early on. It's right in the beginning of this sefer called Hakdomas Usharim, Shar Aleph, Perek Beis. We're going to learn a little piece here now. Okay, it's actually not complicated at all. It's not really Kabbalah, but he says it in a way that's, I think, brilliant and beautiful and very revelatory. Let's go through this together. V'chol inyan hasaga utfisa mizulasai. Full stop. Any understanding and any understanding of Hashem has to emanate from without, from an external source. V'chol inyan hasaga utfisa of the Rabbeinu Shalom, by definition, has to be mizulasai. It has to come from something other than him. Why? Ki ein bil odoi yodea me amitosoi me'uma. For nobody other than Hashem can actually know his essence, his truth. As the Rambam writes, and I have to find out where it is, I've forgotten. Rambam writes, Ilu Yedativ Hayisiv. If I were to know him, I would be him. So therefore, he's posing a bit of a problem. Therefore, any knowledge that I can have of Hashem by definition has to come from a source outside of him. Because it's not possible. So whenever we talk about Hashem, it is only that which has been revealed to us via existence. That's our gisha, our tzugang, our approach. Now he's going to explain. Right. So we talk about the name of Havaya being Shem Ha'etzem. It's sometimes called the name of essence, etc. Hagam she'amarnu shehoira osohu al mitzi osohu ha'amitis shehu b'tohoi v'tomid, says the Leshem, despite the fact that I've mentioned to you already that when we talk about the name, the highest emanation within creation, Havaya, it means Hashem's existence, which is in the present constantly, ubilti's man, and outside of time. He says, even that revelation, even that only filters down through us, to us, because there is the worlds and reality exists. Nimtza. Everything is in the category of something that is to be found. Nimtza means, when we talk about a motsui, it is something that can be perceived, something that can be found. That's what it means. And this is really, really fundamental. We talk about mitzius. Why do we use the word mitzius as it has now become a synonym for reality? It isn't. It isn't. It is that which can be perceived, that which can be found. That's all. V'hu asher b'hiras Hashem Havaya Baruch Hu hinehu gam ken rak achar shenizgale b'hamatzias d'hoilamos kulam. Even when we use the name of Havaya, which is the highest that we can think of, that's also only after there has been a revelation of worlds, of reality. Now here's the bit to highlight or underline. Ki kol loshoin nimtza hu moire al gilui bechidush shenischadesh v'nizgale v'nimtza. The word nimtza means something that has been revealed and to us, and therefore it is to be found. It also means that it could be something that is revealed to an other. Kikenu loshen nimtza. Shenimtza, it's in the passive. It's not put in either in active terms or in absolute terms. It is in passive terms. In other words, it is meaningful within the context of that it can be perceived. That's what it means. It is nimtza. Motsui. Hashem is motsui. He can be perceived. So you think about that deeply. It's a rewiring. This is not who or what Chas v'Shalom Hashem is. On that, we have the famous words of the Zohar Kodesh, quoted many times, that Hashem himself, les machshavat tfisa beiklal, not even bekutzoy shel yud, which is keser, which is the kutzoy of the yud of the Havaya. If you learn Tanya, you'll see it. That's not what Perika is. All we can talk about is nimtza, motsui, even Havaya. This is something that we have been given the permission, the privilege of being able to perceive. It is something that is perceptible. You hear? I must admit, I'm ashamed to say I had never learnt this before while I was preparing this, and it spoke to me very strongly because it's incredibly fundamental. Let's run through this, and then I'm going to show you. We'll come back down to earth with a Tshuvas HaRashba. Exactly the same thing. Ki kenu nimtza loshen nimtza shenimtza lezulasai ve'ikar loshen nimtza hu migzeiras yotza. Now here he does an incredible thing. It's quite Hirschian. It's a sort of Malbim, Ksava Kabbalah type of territory. Listen to this. He says that etymologically, you wouldn't think of the Leshem as a philologist or whatever. The word nimtza is migzeiras yotza. It emanated, it exited, it came out. Sheyotza meha'alomosai. It exited its essential state of being not known, and now it is nimtza. Isn't that brilliant? That the word nimtza, motza, means yotza. It was in a place which was concealed and utterly unknowable, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, tzimtzum, whatever, and now it can be perceived. It's yotza, and therefore it is nimtza. Varihu moir al chidush al kopanim v'rotza loima shenischadesh giluyoy mehalamosei shebetchila hoya nelam v'achshav nizgala. And that's what nimtza means. It's a giluy b'chidush v'hu me'eis hatzimtzum v'hala she'oz yotza mehalamosei de'b'chinas ein soiv v'nosin efshor v'ligiluyav. Finished. Beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? To me, I found that very, very, very clear, very precise, and gives it things a clear definition. And now we'll come back down to earth, if we may. I know you've all been in, Kesser or Zeranpin or wherever you were. We're going to come straight down to earth with a Tshuvas HaRashba, beautiful Tshuvas HaRashba. You may have heard this before. There are Nefesh HaChaim. I'm not sure whether he quotes it, but he certainly talks about it. But we'll go back to the Sheirish. Here's a question for you. Let's take a bracha. Any bracha you made, any birchas hamitzvahs. Let's take any birchas hamitzvahs, and here there's a very important question. Let's take any bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al whatever. Grammatically, it makes absolutely no sense because we start off in the second person. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam. We're talking to him. Atah, you. You are the Makara Bracha, our God, the King of the world. And therefore, to be grammatically consistent, how should we continue? Asher kidashtanu b'mitzvosecha. We're talking to him. We're saying you. And yet, what do? We switch in the middle of a bracha from second person to third person. And we say, Asher kidashanu b'mitzvosav. He sanctified us with his mitzvahs. What's going on? This is Fred the Rashba. Tshuvas HaRashba, Kvela number 6. Tshuvas HaRashba, Chelek Simon on base. Oid sha'alta, lama niskana bracha mechza nimtza or mechza nistar. Kleima beguf sheni beguf shlishi. Tshuva. And here's a big yesod, very important. Da, diyesh lebale ha'chochma soid niskov ve'ein lanu kan esek b'nistaris. The Rashba gives us a tantalizing glimpse of his familiarity with Kabbalah. But, as you know, he had a whole pulmus against Kabbalah, Rabbi Avraham Abulafia, and all this other stuff. So he says, it exists, but we don't busy ourselves with Kabbalah. V'omnom, yesh tam nigle godol, hatoyeles, b'mashetiknu nusach habrachos kain, rotzalema b'nigle v'nista. Why? And here's the yesod. Excuse me, I've put it in bold here. Lefi, shekvar yodato dishnei yesodos yesh, this is the Heilig of the Rashba. Tshuvas HaRashba. There are two fundamental ideas upon which all is based. Ha'echad lo da'as shehu yizbarach mechuyev hametzius. To know that Hashem is imperative. His existence is imperative. V'she'ein sofek b'zeh klal, as you know. V'habeis, and secondly, to know she'ein amitosa yizbarach museges ki im la'atzma yizbarach levad. That only he alone can totally understand and appreciate the truth of his own existence. V'hu b'metziusai, therefore he is b'metziusai, he is nigle lakoil, uva'amitas nahusai nistar v'nelam. There's a duality here, insofar as that he must exist. That's selbstverständlich. That everybody has to know. That is something that is imperative. It must be. On the other hand, just because there's a danger. Just because you think you know that Hashem has to exist, you think therefore you know who he is. No way. He is unknowable. And to acknowledge that, we have that within the bracha. Says the Rashba, these are two fundamentally important ideas, and therefore Chazal wanted to express this tension within every bracha. This is, so you shouldn't make this mistake. Nefesh HaChaim, if I may now, says, I don't remember actually whether he quotes the Rashba or not, but he takes this either a step further, or he gives us a slightly different insight. It works totally well with the Rashba. He says as follows. The first point, and it's the same idea, and you always have this duality, Sovev Kol Almin and Mamale Kol Almin, and this is a really deeper idea, but Hashem's existence. So we start off and saying, Baruch Atah Hashem. By the way, I know here they're not really that much into it, but certainly in the when addressing a very important person, you understand this in German, right? Sie or du, yeah. So would the Rosh Hashiva like? And then, if you ever thought about it, we start with saying Baruch Atah Hashem, you. The familiarity. So we excuse ourselves and we say, what right would we have to address him? We don't have a right. But it's only because Elokeinu, you chose to initiate this relationship. This is what you want. Melech HaOlam. If it wasn't for the fact that Hashem wanted to have a relationship with him, we'd have no right to address him. But this is what you want. Baruch Atah Hashem. And then we excuse ourselves. Elokeinu, Melech HaOlam. But then says the Nefesh HaChaim, then we talk about the Kedusha. And here's an irony a bit. He doesn't see it as an irony, but Kedusha, what is the translation of the word Kedusha? It means separateness, to be separate. Kedusha, which we are infused with, comes from Hashem direct. Ashek Kedusha, we can know nothing about. And therefore we immediately switch to the Nistar and we say, because the Kedusha comes not from him as he wishes to be known to us, but him as he really is. Kedusha filters down however it does. And therefore we go, whoa, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvayso. Okay? We go back to the third person. Let's get one more source in today. And this is also a Kabbalistic source.
Isn't it a little bit different? Because I was thinking that the first part is Hashem, and obviously Hashem is his essence and what we cannot know. And this word is Baruch Atah Hashem. Only you are Hashem, and only you know what Hashem, what the essence is. But Elokeinu is the manid b'koichos. It's that part of Hashem that we can perceive in that world, so to say. So we can also make a relation, so to say. Elokeinu. Don't say. There's. But
then we're switching back to the third person. The Hashem and Elokeinu bit is a topic in itself, and it's really for Shema. We'll get to it when we talk about Yichud Hashem.
I'm wondering whether it's not tied into that.
How?
Atah is Hashem, you. So we're addressing it directly, but it's also saying like you are Hashem, and I don't know. We are not able to.
So you're taking the Atah. Basically, what you're doing is you're turning the Atah on its head, rather than the way the Rishonim and most people generally tend to understand it is. It's a form of direct.
Yeah, intimacy.
You're saying it's the opposite. Okay, interesting. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
And we tend to make such a big thing.
You'd need a makor, but I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're trying to say. Okay. Yeah. Counterintuitive. Okay, let's do one more quick source, and then we'll leave it for today. This is the Gorn on Sifra Tzniusa, so it's also a Kabbalistic source, but again, the same just to reinforce what we saw a little bit in the Leshem and the Rashba. Ki Ein Sof Baruch Hu Ein Lachshav Beklal Uklal. That's why in Kabbalah we don't talk about Hashem; it's spoken about as Ein Sof, right? Ein Sof you can't even think about. Ki Osel Lechanois Boy Afilu Chavis Hamtzias. You can't even say that Ein Sof must exist. You can't even say. Let me repeat this. You can't even say that Ein Sof is Chavis Hamtzias. When we say Chavis HaMetzios, we're not referring to Ein Sof. We can't say anything. You hear that? You can't even say that he has to exist. It has to exist. No. Ki afilu sfira rishayna kairin Ayin. The first sphira is called Ayin. Keser is known as Ayin. V'achochma me Ayin timotze. Ayin. It's Ayin. Ayin is a very interesting and strong word, and we're not here to learn Kabbalah, and I don't know that much about it, but it's nothingness. It's Ayin. You flip it around, it becomes Ani, and that's another whole story. But even this first sphira, we call Ayin. Shniya mechanin yesh. The second one, Chochma, v'hachochma me'ayin timotzei, ve'ezeh mekoim bina. Pasuk. V'hachochma me'ayin timotzei. Chochma comes from Ayin. Chochma is koyach ma. Okay. So what he's saying here is, when we're talking about Ein Sof, whatever that means, Tzilus, even we can't even say that must exist. So we'll give you a slightly deeper insight. Sheyodanu shehu nimtza v'zel levad masigin mimena. That's all we can say. Mashein kein barishayna. V'kol kein be'ein sof baruch hu yizbarach shmai. She'asel achshav klal uklal. Afilu ein sof asel likroisei. We're not even really allowed to say ein sof. You're not even allowed to. It's not something we can think about. It's not something we can speak about. It's unknowable in umash anu medabrim boi ubisfirais. Very important. So when we do talk about Ein Sof or Sfiros, Hakoil meritzoinoi v'hashgachosoi sheyodua mitzad pe'uloi sof. Any thing that is perceptible, as we saw in the Leshem, about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even the highest and deepest, even to talk about and say Keser or Ayin or anything, that's only known mitzad pe'uloi sof. Ritzoinoi, we can, it's nimtza, it's motsui, there's a gilui. What's the gilui? Because we can see things. We can work things. I have a brain and that's also pe'uloi sof yizbarach. It's not who he is. V'zeh haklal l'chol darkei hakabbalah, says the Goyim. V'yodua, k'shem shehu bal bilti tachlis, his rotzen, listen to this. So how can we say? He's saying a big chiddush. Ein Sof, we often, when you talk about people maybe who know a little bit about things, and they'll understand there's a difference. There's Ein Sof, and we don't talk about Ein Sof. But they make a big mistake, says the Goyim. When they're talking about Ein Sof, they think they're talking about Ein Sof. Chas v'shalom. Do you know what they mean, Ein Sof? Ein Sof is Ritzonai, which is Pe'ulai. His Ratzon is also a Pe'ula. And there's Ein Sof to that Ratzon, and we call that Ein Sof. But it's Ein Sof to his Pe'ula. It's not Chas v'shalom Ein Sof to Mitziusai. We can't know or say or think or anything at all about Amitas Metziusai. It's even when we're saying Ein Sof, it's Ein Sof is to Ritzainai, Pe'ulai, because he's, look at this, he's Mefurish. V'zeh haklal l'chol darkei v'yodua, k'shem shehu bilti bal tachlis, kein Ritzainai, v'zehu Ein Sof l'Ritzainai ha'poshut. And even that you're not even allowed to think about. We'll leave it here for today.